Hey, y'all, I'm Mandy Giles, and I have a special treat today. I am here with the amazing Robbie Samuels. Robbie does so many things so well. He is a professional speaker, a business growth strategy coach, a virtual event design consultant, executive Zoom producer, MC, podcast host, author, and I'm sure I'm leaving something out. He's been recognized as a networking expert by Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and Inc. And since 2016, he has hosted the On the Schmooze podcast. And since March 2020, he has hosted a weekly No More Bad Zoom virtual happy hour, which I have attended. It was so much fun. And his Zoom tips have been super helpful for me. So I've enjoyed getting to know Robbie through his work, and I have learned so much from him, especially through his new book, Small List, Big Results, which is coming out this month. Now, after I learned all this cool stuff from Robbie, I heard on one of his podcasts that he is an out trans man and parent of two, which was like icing on the cake for me, given the work that I do with parents of trans youth. So, Robbie, I wanted to talk with you today about being a trans parent, which is different than parent of trans youth. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about your book. So, first, tell me about how being a trans man has shaped your experience of being a father.
Well, back in the before times, I've looked like this for 20 years. So this is a while now. But when I was first sort of making the leap to, yes, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna take hormones, I'm gonna commit to this. I was really feeling angsty about being a white man, honestly, because I was raised, socialized in this very queer feminist space, and white men were the problem. And so I didn't really become aware of my whiteness until I started to really think of myself in this new role. And I actually sought out, I found the National Organization for Men Against Sexism, which had a local chapter where I was, which was independently run. It had started as part of a university and then was community led. And I got involved there. And that was actually incredibly helpful because I got to see that I didn't have to qualify by saying I'm trans to talk about being a feminist or to talk about caring about racial justice or caring about equality or equity. And so it was just really great to be surrounded by it. At that time, in the beginning, it was cis men, a couple of gay men, a couple of bi men, but over time we would host discussions and we started attracting people of a whole cross of the masculine sort of spectrum. And I think that really starts my journey, because then when I approached fatherhood, I also continued to be like, you know what, I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I'm home with my kids. And then I got involved with the National At-Home Dad Network and got involved there and was part of their leadership, of their diversity and inclusion committee. And a lot of this actually stems from a podcast, the Modern Dads podcast, which is run by these two guys who started City Dads group. And City Dads got chapters in 40 different cities across the United States that are all volunteer-led community gatherings of dads. And so I just sort of threw myself into these different spaces, and the plurality of experience made me realize that I could just show up as me. And when I left my day job to focus full-time on my business, I didn't know in that moment that we were about to have a kid. And that year is when we realized we were going to have a kid. And so I was sort of really firmly establishing my new business, which had been a side hustle, into a business while preparing for parenthood, and realizing I was gonna be home with this kid because we couldn't afford to have any other option. And so the first 3.5 years, I was a primary caretaker, and now my wife and I are both home, working from home. And thankfully she's home because my business got really busy. But I think that in some ways it gave me permission, being a trans parent was partly once I explored the range of how dads show up, I think I really appreciated that I could just show up and be me.
Oh, wow. That sounds great. So it sounds like community has been and probably is really important to you. I know as the parent of trans youth, I sought out people who understood my experience, and just to know that I was not alone. And so it sounds like maybe that's something that resonates with you as well.
It does. What's sort of funny about this is that if left to my own devices, the people I socialize with are women.
Uh-huh.
That's still true. And in Boston, where I just left Boston after 20 years, like those are my closest friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so, moving now to the Philly suburbs, and I'm like, I want to establish community. And I'm like, do I want to like go and hang out with dads or like parents or, queer families or, so, but I do think that finding community is really important to me and generally important to people. And I think it would help me find my own place. When I went to my first national at-home dad network event, they were talking about how they had stood up to a policy in North Carolina at the time. And they were actually meeting in North Carolina, and they chose to keep their meeting in North Carolina, but they did a huge statement. There were only about 100 people at the event. So they're leaving. The state wasn't going to, it's not like the NBA. So they stayed, but they made a public statement, and they decided to do a panel the next, like on their last day on LGBT families parenting. So I stood up to like thank them, and that was the first. I was like the trans dad in the room suddenly, and they were like came up to me and they were like, "Can you be on the panel tomorrow?" And so like that's that kind of opportunities come too when you invite opportunities. And I realized that a lot of the at-home dads were having a real crisis of identity because they were in less progressive spaces often, and they were the only one, and they didn't know how to feel included. And so a lot of the journey that they were going on, I understood from the LGBT sort of perspective of wanting belonging. Like that's what we all want. And so I think in some ways it was really nice for me to see. I mean, it's a room full of cis, almost entirely white, not entirely white men who were grappling with what did fatherhood mean to them. And I was like, I don't have to be like struggling as hard because this is a universal experience. What does fatherhood mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's not about being a trans parent. It was just about being a parent, which is hard enough.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. So I am curious about how you talk about or model gender diversity in your home, because I know the concepts around gender diversity are really complex, and I know a lot of the adults that I talk to have a really hard time grasping, and it was hard for me to grasp as a cisgender straight woman when my kids first came out to me. So what kind of environment have you created in your home around these issues?
One of the questions I've gotten from folks is like, how are you going to come out to your kids? I'm like, I'm not out to my kids. Like, this is what? Like, this is what life is. Like, they might come to realize the importance of this, right? And like the difference of it. We're very proud of being a queer family. My wife's a queer cis woman. I'm a queer trans papa. Like we're papa and mom in our family. We've got 2 kiddos. In December, they'll be 4 and 6. And it just sort of is. One of the things we've worked really hard on is their books. And so there was a moment about a year into my first child's life that my wife like audited the entire bookshelf and realized, like, just by accident, how many books were about white boys as the lead, like just by default. And so we passed all those along to other people, and we made a list on Amazon of the books that we wanted. And then anytime there was a holiday and grandparents and siblings and other people wanted to get things, we were like, pick from this list. And we got an incredible array of great books that way, that really featured strong girl voices, strong women voices, people of color in the lead, like trans people, where that is the main point of the story and where it's just a character. And we do have some specific books, and I'll have to look them up and share them with you for the notes below this video. But we have some books that explicitly talk about pronouns and different gender identities. And one of the things I love is one of the books in particular, it's about non-binary people not being the same. And this is one of the things I always thought was, even true about lesbians. Like, ask 5 lesbians who they loved, who they had sex with, who they were romantically attracted to, and why. And you're gonna get 5 different answers. And yet, we think it's strange that other people, it's like, no, it's like we're all different people. We just have these umbrellas. So I just love that, like, my kids understand that some people might identify as both boy and girl, neither boy and girl, sometimes boy. So I was like, and my oldest at like 3.5 was firmly declared himself a boy. Like he's a boy, and very clear. You ask him his pronouns, he, him. He gets it. The youngest, he really likes the pronoun Z and they. Not like he wants us to use them for him, but if you ask him what's his favorite pronoun, which is how he perceives the question, he's like, ooh, Z and they. And like one time I was like, what pronoun do you want me to use for you? He said, me. I was like, right.
Okay.
He was 3. So it's like,
I am me.
It's like
which is the way
perfect.
it should be.
It's perfect. It's like, of course, it's your favorite pronoun. Me is my favorite pronoun. Me. So, one of the things we challenge them on is like we see someone in the playground, we say kid. I also refer to my kids as kids and kiddos. They are boys, particularly as far as I know. We'll find out, but like right now, one of them firmly in that camp. But I'm also like, it doesn't matter to the story most of the time. So kid and kiddos is like fine, you know. But we point out other children at the playground and we'll say kid as opposed to like that girl or that boy. That's just is a poor practice. And my youngest will mispronoun people because he's 3. And then we're like, oh, I'm not sure if that's right, but you might want to check with them. Which is what happened at the bus stop the other day. You know, this little kid walked up and he was referring to a little girl and was like, oh, you know, he got here. And I was like, I don't know that that's quite the right pronoun, but you might want to check. And so the 3-year-old's like, hey, what's your pronouns? 4-year-old's like, what? And the parent was like, we haven't really gotten there yet. But she goes by she and her pronouns. 3-year-old's like, thanks. Okay. So she got here. And I don't know.
It's great modeling though. I mean, both, well, for that parent too, maybe about talking to their kids about pronouns, and then maybe that conversation planted a little seed in their heads about maybe we need to talk to our kids about this. So well, that is great, because I think kids just seem to get it, and so much more than a lot of adults do. So I think adults we've got our work cut out for us, some of us at least. So I was curious about what advice you might have for parents who are raising transgender or gender diverse kids.
Acceptance, love. I mean, there's been studies about this. It's if you can accept a little more than you were like prior to knowing, like if you can shift the culture in your family just even a little bit, the impact on your child's mental health is dramatic. You know, I'm not even saying like don't kick your kids out. Of course, don't kick your kids out. Sure. But my family has just done this so beautifully. I mean, I came out into the sort of general queer community, first stumbled in honestly as a like, well, I don't really know anyone who's gay, but like I care about everybody, not realizing that I was like a walking stereotype of a dyke, like honestly, not getting that at all. And then people were like, oh, you're this. And I was like, I don't really like pronouns. I don't like, actually I was not pronouns then. I was like, I don't like labels. And so I lived this like labelless existence for a while. But my mom was like, I said, oh, I'm going to go to a gay bar. And she was like, oh, isn't it like by the lake? And she's like, oh, it's Kiss, right? I was like, why does my mom know about the gay bar? And then I took a college class on LGBT issues and found out my mom had taken it. And I was like, it was like all these little things.
She knew something.
I don't know, right? It's just like, it helped. She was a medical profession, so she was taking it to understand her patients. But I think that when I finally sort of came out to them, first as queer and then later as trans, it was just sort of like, be happy. Like that was the goal. And, you know, I feel really, really fortunate. And my in-laws too, my wife's been trying to figure out how to frame the coming out part of that story, because I visited her family and then I went home and she stayed behind and she was in the car with them and was like, and by the way, Robbie's trans. They were like, like that was their reaction. And,
Okay.
now almost a decade later,
Uh-huh.
it's just, it's as soon as I shifted for myself, my world opened up because I wasn't stopping and thinking about gender all the time. And I just
Mhm.
think about, for a parent, if your child's happier now than they were, like embrace that. And if your child is gender fluid or non-binary, like, kind of roll with it. I know that even for me, like I came up in a time 20 years ago where that was a little less common. And
Mhm.
so I identified as genderqueer for a while, but like I presented like this. So
Mhm.
it's like,
Mhm.
well, I'm sort of gender norm in my representation. So I don't know. I think honestly, acceptance and education. I love PFLAG for this. It's one of my favorite resources, because they have chapters all over the country, because they're easy to access online, because they have good books, because they've been around a long time. I think that's a good place to start. My parents aren't joiners, so they didn't get involved. They're not PFLAG parents, so they didn't get involved in all of that. But if you're looking for community, seek that out,
Mhm.
and also poke around your local school district, and you might be surprised to find there are some queer families there. There might be parents with trans or gay kids. Like, and, build your community locally too.
Sure. Um, PFLAG was the first place I went when one of my kids first started their journey, and
Yeah.
like I knew I was supported, but I needed to know how to support them. And then it gave me the foundation for then when they came out as non-binary, because I had a lot more questions. Um, and so it was super helpful for me. And actually, I don't know if you knew this, I am the president of the Houston chapter of PFLAG.
I didn't know
So
that.
so I feel strongly about giving back to that organization as well. So,
Absolutely.
okay, I want to talk about your new book. As a person who is working for social change, I am learning a lot from your book about who I should be talking to and how to get my message out in the most effective way. So, I would love for you to give us an overview of the book and talk about how the concepts in the book can be helpful for people like me who are looking to build support for a cause.
My background is nonprofit, and particularly
Okay.
I was organizing fundraising events for like 15 years.
Mhm.
So I totally get this question. One of the mistakes that entrepreneurs and social activists and anybody who's trying to make a dent in this world makes is that you get an idea in your head and you run full force into making that idea happen without checking to see if anyone else cares. And
Mhm.
then once the idea is fully formed, you try to sell it. You try to, get people to sign up. You try to motivate people to take action. And there's sort of a want response. What if instead of fully jumping in with both feet into an idea without vetting it, you vetted it? You focused on how to build your audience before you created whatever that is. And I suggest in the book, this concept. I have this sort of belief that 80% of the people you need to know to be successful, you've already met. So I'm not talking about ads on the internet or going to a zillion new events. I'm talking about leaning into the existing network that you have of people who already know, like, and trust you, and then surveying that group by really just like looking through the list and identifying people who, would remember your name and you'd love to hear from out of the blue. And then from that list, looking at people who, how well do people know you? Like how close is the connection? How much is their influence in the world? So if they got excited about what you're doing, how many people could they tell? And just gut instinct on that. And then last, how interested might they be in whatever you're trying to do? And with that, go and talk to 20, 25 people over about 6 weeks and build a combination of people who are going to sign up with you and people who can help you spread the word. So referral partners or fellow experts, co-collaborators. And if you are barking up the wrong tree and your idea is not sound, you will find that out very
Mhm.
quickly. And it might be people need a few steps earlier. Like we are further along in the journey than the people that we're trying to serve. And
Mhm.
so they're just not ready for this yet. They need something else. Better for us to find that out and create the stepping stones for them to join us in the larger, longer journey, than to bang our heads on things and spend money too. I think that a mistake from entrepreneurs and social activists is like, branding and getting a beautiful website and getting fancy videos made and, whatever it is, all without vetting. Like no one's paid for it. No one signed up. No one's excited yet. So even with my book, the content of the book was vetted as I was creating. I was co-creating it. I did several free masterclasses in 2018 when I started writing the book. Then I collaborated by coaching dozens of entrepreneurs, got a lot of ideas from doing that work. And then when I went to actually move forward with the book this year, the title changed dramatically, the cover, the subtitle, as I was sort of sharing it out with my network and being really clear about who my ideal audience was for this book, who my ideal reader is. And one of the things that sort of was striking to me was like the book cover that it was a couple of options. One was blue, one was white. And I liked the blue one. And the blue one also had this like networking graphic, bubbles of people with like little lines. And I was like, yeah, because that's what I'm about, networking. But it didn't resonate with the people because they're not looking for that solution. They don't know that that's the solution. So their issue is that they have in their mind a small email list. And so that was really helpful for me to shift that. And I ended up with this like image of my book that looks, I think of it as like a Wi-Fi symbol, but it's like a Rorschach test. People said, it's this, it's that, but it's like really cool. And then, and actually originally there was like little, like bathroom symbols, like men's and women's symbols on there. And it was every other. And then I said to my designer, like 2/3 of my, my podcast guests are women, and it's women I'm really reaching for. So we switched it to 2/3. And then someone was looking at it and was like, well, this is a very binary presentation.
Yes.
And I was like, two people said it. Third person said, I was like, all right, let me figure. So I wrote to my designer. And so he made some non-binary figures as well. And we also put in some people in wheelchairs. And so it's just sort of like, it was a much better outcome. I love the outcome. I just wouldn't have done it myself. But you know what? I'm not my ideal reader. And that's something for us to remember when we're designing and creating something. We're not creating it for ourselves. What we need is different than the people we're trying to help and serve. And so that book, like the transformation of the book title and the book cover really helped me kind of cement that.
Oh, that makes so much sense about especially journey that resonates for me as parenting trans kids, and that I'm at a certain place in my journey, and what I am needing and what I think people might need is very different than maybe what a lot of other people are looking for just starting out of their journey. Like, right. Oh my gosh, my kid just came out to me. Now what? So you've given me a lot to think about. I need to dive in deeper into the book. So Robbie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I have learned a lot. And like I said, I can't wait to dive deeper into the book. So how can people find you? How can they connect with you? Where can they find out about your book?
I made a special landing page for you.
You did?
I did. So folks can go to robbiesamuels.com/Mandy. They will get to my book page. Okay. The book is actually secretly out right now. The official launch is October 31st, but it's actually out right now at 99 cents so that my early reviewers can buy it and leave their reviews. So it's out and it's going to be free on the 31st, and then it'll be 99 cents for another week. And then the price will slowly go up as the paperback will come out November 26th. Originally, it's just the ebook, and the audiobook comes in January. But robbiesamuels.com/Mandy. And that way I'll know who from your audience came and found it.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh gosh, to have my own page. Well, I will put that information into the conversation notes so that everybody can have that. And thank you again, Robbie. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Mandy.
All right. Bye.